Good evening, friends. Tonight it is Monday, May 4th, and it has been a long day of working inside, uh, reading, and on the computer, and I am looking to rest here shortly. So I'm on early. The sun is still going down. It's actually a beautiful kind of sunset, but it's pretty windy here in South Denver. My name is Kama Hamilton Morton, and I am the senior pastor of Grace United Methodist Church in South Denver. And we invite you to check us out on Facebook and on YouTube at Denver Grace UMC. We're also online at gracefordenver.org, and that's the number four, grace number four denver.org. So on this Tuesday night, gosh, what has happened to our season, to our spring that is unfolding? How are we engaging with that, with Mother Nature and with each other in the midst of a pandemic? What does that look like and feel like for you tonight? This is the this is a week that is leading into this coming Sunday in the life of the Christian community. It's going to be the fifth Sunday of Easter, and it's an odd Sunday in the life of many churches because it's also Mother's Day. And I'm not going to talk a lot about that tonight, but it is, some churches just go all in for the whole Mother's Day thing. And in fact, I've been seeing some Facebook groups from churches around the country of all kinds, including a lot of evangelical churches. And what are you doing for Mother's Day? You know, with the pandemic and stuff. What are you giving? How are you lifting up women or mothers or whatever? And then there are other churches that are more liturgical, Catholic, Lutheran, Episcopal, and some Methodist and Presbyterian, and other churches that are like, Mother's Day is not a church holiday. It is a Hallmark holiday, and it has turned into this big um, cultural thing, but it's not a religious holiday. So, what do we do with it? Those of us in a faith community, how do we lift that up, or do we? I served a church that when I arrived, my first Mother's Day, my first May there, I was told of an older woman in the congregation who would not come to church on Mother's Day. She did not. I mean, her situation of her life, her experiences, her family. And at that time, what I was told is that there was a tradition, as there is in many churches. So I'm not judging this particular congregation before I got there. But sometimes Mother's Day turns into a big competition of, how many, if you've had this many children, stand up and people clap. And if you've been married this many years, stand up and people clap. And it turns, for some people, Mother's Day, man, that is a complex, emotionally laden, cultural holiday, let alone bringing anything with your faith community layered on top of that. I mean, there are all kinds of people that have all kinds of feelings around something like Mother's Day that can be complex and difficult or challenging, as well as inspiring and just filled with blessing. So, wherever you're at with that, as we lean into that this week, I haven't seen as many commercials and things on it. And I think this whole pandemic is, doing whatever to all of us. But, if you have people in your life that have been mothering figures, I invite you to reach out to them, whether they be biologically related to you or not, to give thanks. And whether they are, as I think in my life about, which is its own soap opera story, but not only biological mothering figures or by marriage, but teachers, pastors, people who raised me in the church, people who raised me in the community, through my music, my love of music, people who are a part of music groups and instruction, um, church camps, just all kinds of places in my life, and then vocationally and educationally, people who have had that kind of mothering, guiding influence on me. So I invite you, as we lean into, it's only Monday, but you've got a few days to be thinking about it. What does that look like? I mean, even for Doug and I, the sense of mothering and um, is a complex thing. And um, I think, there's somebody should come up with a line of cards that are worded for complex relationships. And for mothers or fathers or family members or birthdays or whatever. So if somebody's out there looking for something to do and has a creative spirit, that would be something that many of us might appreciate. But in the life of the church, so at Denver Grace this year, it's my first year there. I just got there last July, so it's my first Mother's Day, and with the pandemic, and I thought, it's always good to remind ourselves and to reground ourselves in this American cultural experience of the history behind Mother's Day. And as with other things, it was actually a pretty revolutionary experiment and experience. With let's see, Anna Jarvis and Julie Ward Howe, and these women who called for a Mother's Day for peace. And it was about social justice. It was about righteousness. It was about equity. It was about honoring in relevant ways how women are treated and invited to be empowered in our culture, which still to this day is not across the board. So we're going to explore that at Denver Grace UMC this Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we're going to invite, for all of those, again, I have men in my life who have been mothering images, who have been a part of the mothers of my collective experience, and have provided some of that. So it's not strictly a gendered thing, but certainly in our culture, I think about the women who have lifted me up and who have guided me and who have gone through things that have been harrowing, those that I know and those that I don't know. And so I invite you to think about those that have been mothered. And in fact, coming back to this woman who wouldn't go to church on Mother's Day, I actually called on her before the service and I said, I don't know what your experience has been, and I don't know, your reasonings, but I said, we're not going to be doing any of that. In fact, partly out of my own experience of life and family and family systems, that's a pretty important thing for me, is to really acknowledge the complexity of our life and our family relationships, and the prayers that I use around Mother's Day and Father's Day acknowledge both those who bless us and nurture us and care for us. There are a lot of people for whom the concept of mother is not a happy word or a concept. It can be abusive, it can be painful, it can be life-threatening, it can be manipulative, it can be all kinds of things. And so the prayers that I hone in on to share up during our worship experience try to give a glimpse of the varieties of that. There are people who wish they could be mothers, but biologically are unable to. There are those who have chosen not to become biological mothers, and yet may have an influence on our lives in ways of nurture and care. So anyway, it's one of those interesting concepts. And I have to say, shortly before I wanted to start this, I all of a sudden realized that there's a woman in my life that I don't know personally, but who has impacted me. She's younger than I am, and she died a year ago today. And her name, and I want you to look this up and look her up, and I want you to read all her books. And I would love to do, we actually had a adult Sunday school class scheduled, and the books are in the church to go through one of her books. And so look her up. Her name is Rachel Held Evans, Rachel Held Evans, Rachel Held Evans. And Rachel, I discovered a number of years ago. She was a blogger. She was a young woman, just a prolific thoughtful young woman. She grew out of a very fundamentalist evangelical background, and yet something in her young adult life brought her to a point of expanding beyond that, and in her experience kind of growing outside of that. In fact, she grew, one of the first books I read of hers was something, growing up in Monkey Town or something, and she redid it and renamed it, but it was she grew up in the town where the Scopes trial took place, and so the Scopes monkey trial 100 years ago, and so so her experience of that was just pretty pretty interesting. Let's see, what was it called? It was called Evolving in Monkey Town. It's a great book. Oh my gosh, that may have been the first one I read of hers, which was one of her early ones. Evolving in Monkey Town. She kind of did it and edited it, and they called it Faith Unraveled later. But that's wonderful. I tell you, as a woman, with Mother's Day coming up this week, one of the an interesting book was her, it's called A Year of Biblical Womanhood, and she went through the Bible and looked up descriptions of what women are supposed to do in the Bible, and she decided to take 12 of the things that she saw that women were supposed to do, and she said, I'm going to do these, I'm going to take 12 of these things and I'm going to do them for a month at a time. So she took 12 things and lived them out. And it's funny, it's poignant. It makes you, again, as she was learning and growing with her love of the scripture and of the Bible and the Christian tradition, but expanding that beyond her evangelical fundamental belief that she grew up with. It's funny. There's one where she's supposed to call her husband master, and her husband Dan was just like, yeah, whatever. No thanks. And anyway, so I'm wearing a shirt. It's backwards on the camera, on the selfie camera, but I'm wearing a t-shirt that says Evolving Faith. And a year and a half ago, in the fall of 2018, Rachel and some other friends that were kind of in a similar genre of exploring faith beyond the strictures of what they maybe grew up in, they had a conference, and I think the first one was in maybe Virginia or North Carolina, I can't remember. And I happened to be in Billings, Montana, at the church, and I ran across something about this, and they said, if you want to stream it. So I signed up to stream it, and I watched a good portion of that very first conference with her, Sarah Bessey, and it was powerful. Such a witness of Christian growth and life and encouragement. And you talk about mothering, and inviting us as the audience and as the readers and as the connectors to grow in our faith, to take a hold of our faith and to grow in it. And so, as it so happened, I moved here to Denver last July 1, and the second annual Evolving Faith Conference was slated to be in Denver that first weekend of October, I think. However, as they were planning for that conference a year ago today, Rachel died. Young woman, young children, beloved blogger, author, writer, thinker of spiritual depth and breadth, who had helped to bring people, to expand people's notions of that it's okay for you to ask questions, for you to have doubts. It's okay for you to wrestle with your faith. For many people in our country and beyond, Rachel Held Evans became a point of contact for permission to grow faith in different ways. And so this sense of evolving faith, that's been my life. And so I just was struck by her. So on this day, I just want to honor her and say thank you, Rachel and Dan, and those who have continued to keep her works and her writing and her legacy. She changed the scope of religious reflection for many people. So I invite you to look her up, to look at a book or two, and I would love to do some conversations around some of her writing. If anybody's interested, let me know. It's just really powerful, um, because she takes the Bible seriously, but she grew to where she couldn't just take it literally. That was too that was not where she left it. She grew in her faith beyond that. So for all of those sisters and brothers around the world who have become a part of this evolving faith conference community, I think of you tonight. And Nadia Bolz-Weber, who is another very beloved Lutheran pastor, speaker, author, teacher, and who lives here in Denver. I haven't met her yet, but she spoke and preached at Rachel's funeral, and just I know earlier today on Facebook was just really lamenting the memory. So as we think about, gosh, Mother's Day, mothering, growing in our faith, and what that looks like and feels like on a Monday in May. What does that look and feel like for us? So the come here. This guide to prayer for all who walk with God this week. The theme that leads into this coming Sunday is, I thought was interesting. It's called singleness of heart. So as you think about where you're at, often, I don't know about you, but often in my life of faith and journey and expression and learning and growing, I think, man, I can be, my monkey brain easily takes me all over the place as far as reading, writing, thinking, talking, getting to thinking about a lot of things. And so this concept of a singleness of heart I found intriguing as I was kind of moving through this prayer today, thinking about underneath it all, underneath all the stuff, underneath all the material stuff that we have, underneath all the distractions that are hyper capitalist American culture, invites us to go out and spend and buy and spend more and buy more and all this stuff, and to the sense of that if you're in the right box, then you're on the right journey, but if you're not, then you're not, and that's just not been a part of my life. But there's this sense of a singleness of heart. If you could think about how to describe your life, your faith, your relationships, your journey, your call, your leanings in life, is there something that you could think about? And as a good Methodist, I often lean into the concept of grace, that underneath all the layers and all the stuff that we use to divide ourselves and to label ourselves and to judge ourselves based on who we are, what we've done or what we haven't done or whatever, is the sense of, as much as I want to strive for value or excellence or whatever it is in my life, there's still that sense of grace and humility that I hope that when I encounter other people, that when I lead through talking with people or preaching or engaging or teaching or whatever it is, that I can leave the door cracked open with a little humility, because as much as I may feel confident about something, none of us has all the answers. None of us knows it all, and none of us knows the complexities and the layered realities that another person brings to their life. And so that's my hope. I know that I stumble and fall all the time. But I wanted to share a couple of things in this. So think about your life and your goals or your sense of who you are in relationship to others. Do is there kind of a guiding principle, a guiding desire that you strive to stay as far as a focus, that singleness of heart? Notice it doesn't say singleness of knowledge or right understanding or correct belief, but a singleness of heart, that's, where am I at? I'm 50, I'm 51 now. My gosh. Where's my singleness of heart today? Where is that leading me in my relationship to God and to others? I don't know. Oh, and so this begins this is a weekly kind of reflection. And so the affirmation for the week is from Luke 10:27, which says, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind. And the kicker for us, you must love your neighbor as yourself. Of course, that's tricky because that means you really must love yourself first and acknowledge the giftedness of yourself as a created son or daughter, a child of God. And in that you may be able to love others as you love yourself. Whoa, what about that? Yeah, oh man. And then there's a prayer too that relates to, there's Psalm 26 was the psalm for the day. And so I'd like to share maybe just a few. This does not. A few verses of it. Again, the Psalms are just a great resource for our prayer life. And the thing about the Psalms is you can read them and you can say, well, I don't like that, or I struggle with that, or that really pushes me where I don't want to go, or why is it described that in such a way? And that's okay. The Psalms, as with the scripture, it's an organic work of relationship. And so that's just a fine thing. So some bits from Psalm 26. Establish justice for me, Lord, because I have walked with integrity. I've trusted the Lord without wavering. Yea, nay, some days better than others, for sure. Examine me, Lord. Ooh, examine me, Lord. Put me to the test. Purify my mind and my heart. Imagine that. Imagine God being able to just flush out and clean out our mind and our heart tonight as we're getting ready to rest. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Because your faithful love is right in front of me. I walk in your truth. I wash my hands, they are innocent. I walk all around your altar, O Lord, which was a sign of washing of the hands. It was a sign of purification, of being in the presence of God's holy place. I love the beauty of your house, Lord. I love the place where your glory resides. Don't gather me up with the sinners, taking my life along with violent people in whose hands are evil schemes, whose strong hands are full of bribes. But me, I walk with integrity. Save me. Have mercy on me. My feet now stand on level ground. So words in this psalm, there are some words that I can pray, yes, that's what I think I'm there right now. And there are other words that I'm not quite there yet, or at least today, maybe not there. But I want to be a person of integrity. I want to be a person that stumble or fall or rise or popular or not, if I can be known as a person who strive to live with integrity, with that singleness of heart, that's a good goal to have. And there are some days that are easier than others, and some days that I can say, yeah, I sort of lived into that, and other days where maybe not so much. And so from that 23rd Psalm, here's a prayer. God of all that is good and just, grant us courage to walk the path of faith with integrity and wisdom, to rely on you to guide our feet toward the level ground of vital Christian community. Test us where we think we are strong. Strengthen us where we know we are wavering. I love that. Above all, create in us pure hearts, given fully to love of your truth. Amen. And I'm not going to read anything else. There are various readings that throughout the week, as you do this every day, then you can read through various readings through the week. But I want to go ahead. I want to close by singing a spiritual. And again, this as I was getting ready for this, realizing that this was Rachel's a year since Rachel Held Evans passed away. That kind of took me in another direction tonight. But I just lift up prayers, boy, I tell you. And so, as I do like to do sometimes, to hone in on spirituals from our African American tradition, that where the texts may seem simple and yet they call us to life of living with a heart of integrity, a singleness of heart, and with our eyes and our hearts focused on the invitation of God to live an abundant life and lives of love and grace and integrity. So this is in, if you're in our United Methodist book, it's in our little black book, Faith We Sing, number 2208. And this is called Guide My Feet. Guide my feet while I run this race, oh my Lord, guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race, yes, my Lord, hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain, race in vain. I'm your child while I run this race, yes, my Lord, I'm your child while I run this race. I'm your child while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain, race in vain. Search my heart while I run this race, yes, my Lord, search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race, for I don't want to run this race in vain. Guide my feet, hold my hand, stand by me, I'm your child. Search my heart, guide my feet. As the prayer based on that 26th Psalm lifted up for us. Grant us courage to walk the path of faith with integrity and wisdom to rely on you to guide our feet toward the level ground. The sun is going down. May you find rest this night. May you think about what is your singleness of heart. What does that look like for you? To follow a guide, to invite God to guide your feet, to guide your heart, to guide your life. Do you have a word or a phrase or something for you to focus on in this part of your life? For all of those who have beautiful or complex or painful relationships with those who have been the mothering figures in your life, I invite you to breathe deep, to know that you're not alone, and that on the journey, we are all called in some respect to mother each other, to nourish and to nurture and to lift up those in our care. And may we all have an evolving faith May we not be static to where we were at 5 years old or 12 or 20, but may our faith be organic and alive, that singleness of heart may guide us into growth and understanding in new ways, that we can learn about the universe and ultimate meaning and God, whatever your definition of God is for the coming time and period for your life. So let us go forth. Rest well, dear friends, and breathe deep the power and the presence of the living, loving, grace-filled God.